It's Retro Podcast with your host, Retro Lion. We talk music, entertainment, films, and more. And now, here he is, live, Retro Lion. Welcome back to Retro Podcast. I am here with voice actor Edward Glen. Edward Glen, welcome to Retro Podcast. How you been?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. And
Good.
what is your favorite thing about fall?
About fall?
About the fall season?
It's the change of the weather. I'm not a hot weather guy. I don't like the summer. I don't like sun, as you can see as a redhead. I prefer, the colder weather, the sweater weather, I should say, in SNL. But yeah, I do prefer the colder weather. So and the leaves changing colors. My balcony here in Toronto, I have a view of the lake and the east end of the city, and it's beautiful.
Toronto is on my list to visit. I've been to Vancouver. I was actually close to Canada not long ago. I wasn't in Canada, but I was at Put-in-Bay. And when you go up in the tower, you could actually see Ontario from the tower.
Yeah. What were you doing there?
Was there with some friends. We just needed a little vacation, and we went to have a blast. So it was never been to Put-in-Bay. I go to Lake Erie every year. In fact, I live in Lake Erie now, and I've never in my life been to Put-in-Bay. Got to go for the first time. It was fun.
Very cool.
But one of the funniest things that happened in Put-in-Bay is that we went to an Irish pub, and my friend had a Shamrock Shake, and he recommended it to me. And of course, I've had the McDonald's version, but I've never had another version of a Shamrock Shake. And I was like, some really strong mint. What's in here? And he's like, oh yeah, there's liquor in that. I'm like, what?
I don't drink alcohol, so.
I mean, it wasn't too much. It was only a little, but it was.
But enough, right? Like, it gets you going. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Now, so I've seen you a lot of things, but like I'm like, I know you're that guy from that thing, right?
Yeah.
I know that. Like that's the funniest thing. So when you reached out to me, I was like, I know this guy. I know who he is. Right?
Yeah, you're Thomas the Tank Engine.
Well, I'm Thomas the Tank. I am the voice of Thomas. Yeah, in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of other things too, though. But that's kind of my, my top on my list. Yeah, for sure.
It's been 24 years since Thomas and the Magic Railroad came out. What were some of the memories that you remember working on that movie?
First of all, I was not Thomas to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I was Percy.
Nice.
And right. And I went in one day and they said, we want to do some pickups. And I went, wait a minute, these are pickups for Thomas. I'm Percy. And so they started reading me for Thomas during the pickup session. And I was like, and you know what that was like, you've done a lot of voice work. So you go, I'm not sure I should be here. I'm not the guy they think I am. Right. But the distributor, who was Dimension Films, I think at the time, was like, no, we don't like the voice of Thomas. Get someone else to do it. So they tried me out. Basically, my session was try me out. And I called my agent. I said, I think I'm doing Thomas now. And my agent said, okay, get out of there. We'll figure out a different set. Because, they were doing it here because it was cheaper for them to do it here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in Canada, because we don't get fees, we don't get residuals, we don't get any of those things for videos and all that. So I went out and I don't know what to do. And my agent said, just leave. And I did. And they went, well, what does he want? And we said, here's what we want. And they went, okay. And so I did it because they came up quite a bit in terms of what they were going to pay.
Nice.
Yeah.
And, this little character from my childhood, he sits right here on my desk.
This legend is Captain Beacons.
He sure does.
He sure does, right?
Yeah.
The weirdest thing was, I got to tell you this. So Alec Baldwin, who was in the movie, was on Jay Leno. That's how long ago it was. And Jay was talking to him about another movie. He says, I think we have a clip here. And he pulls up a clip, and the clip was him and Thomas going, but what if I don't go into the rails and my wheels fall off? And it was me And so I called my mom and I'm like, hey, I'm on Jay Leno. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Well, my voice is on Jay Leno anyway, so I made it that far.
Well, it's very well done. And speaking of Alec Baldwin, your co-star uh, just won the uh, just won the trial from about a month or 2 months ago.
Yes, I
Uh,
saw that.
what was your reaction when you heard about that incident? Because that incident's been going on for 3 years.
It sure has. And anything on a set, like you've been on sets, like anything can happen, and you don't know if someone down the line has done their work or their job, and you hope that they do, and you trust that they do. And for him, I felt for him because I was like, well, you get that gun. I just finished a show where I used a gun every day in the show, in a lot of scenes, and the props master came to me and went, "Guns clean, we're good, nothing's happened." And I hope that would be the case on a film, something like that with Alec Baldwin on it, with that much money involved. But sometimes you just don't know, and I felt for him. But also, you go check it, double check it, triple check it. Is it okay? Can we go?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah. And besides voicing Thomas, what were the other characters that you voiced in the past?
Well, so I did a couple of voices on Angel Anaconda, which was an ABC series that well, I think I wrote to you when
Mm.
animation was huge here in Toronto. We did a lot of stuff here. Flying Rhino Junior High, Angel Anaconda. I voiced the voice of Gordy, who was like a little asthma kid who was like, "Oh, Angela, I love you. Can you please go gliding with me? Gliding, I like gliding," like that kind of thing, you know. And and then in Flying Rhino Junior High, I was just a couple of characters in the school, and one was Johnny the Skunk, who was like, hey, when they give you a swirly, you dump your head in the toilet and they flush it and they go swirly, 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 and those kinds of things. And those kinds of voices to me, it's just so much fun to do that kind of thing, right? Because
Mm.
and yeah, I know you've done a lot of those things too. You go, this is so much fun. I'm getting paid for this. It's ridiculous. And I'm also the voice of, so here in Canada, we have something called YTV, which is basically Nickelodeon for Canada, and I've been the voice of that for 28 years. So
Mhm.
that and one of those gigs as a voice actor that you go, thank God. Even during the pandemic, it happened, and it was like coming up next is SpongeBob SquarePants, and
Nice.
yeah, 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 and it's Fairly Odd Parents tonight at 9 on YTV. So you do that, and you go, I'm making a living. This is great.
Yeah. And how big is the animation population in Canada?
Well, it's pretty big. It's getting bigger. Like it's starting to come back. A lot of it went non-union for a while during all the strikes and the pandemic and all that stuff. But it's a good group. And for a while there were like when I came back, I lived in England for 12 years, and when I came back, there were about 20 of us who did all the voice.
Mhm.
But now it's a lot. There's like thousands of people who do voice work because it's opened up to every agency, every person who can, kind of make a voice or do something silly, you know?
Yeah. In the UK, they have their like how you're saying in Canada, YTV is Canada's Nickelodeon. Well, in the UK, their Nickelodeon and PBS is CBBC. Have you done any voiceover work for any CBBC shows?
Not for CBBC. Like when I first moved there, I did a series for BBC One where I was like the professor in a school. And
Nice.
so I played, yeah, I played like, and today, kids, we will learn about the theory of relativity, that kind of thing. And it was very strange. I went to BBC Studios every week and did this thing, and then if they caught on, they were like, "You're not really British, are you?" No, no, I'm Canadian. So I think the accent.
Nice. Uh, one question I do have about Canada. So Toronto and Ontario is on my big list to visit. One of the companies that I work for, they also have a company based out in Toronto. And when it comes to visiting those two areas, is there any advice you would award to those who are visiting for the first time?
Oh, Toronto's a great city. Like it has so much to offer. I mean, of course, there's the CN Tower, there's the Ripley Museum, there's all that stuff. But if you go outside of the city, there's many beautiful hikes and places to go, like the Hamilton region, um, the Don Valley, the Don Valley, I think is Don Valley has beautiful hikes. But Toronto, Toronto has so much to offer in terms of it's multiculturalism. And if you go downtown Toronto, you realize instantly that it's like this is a city that has, much like New York, Chicago. I've not been to Boston, but I believe it's the same, where you go, oh, this city has a lot to offer, and I think you can hear somewhat in terms of my accent, like I fall in and out of, um, you know, Great Lakes, the Great Lakes accent, because you have to, but also, um, yeah, Toronto's great. Like it, I mean, I could also say, come see the Leafs. I mean, I'm
Nice.
talking about the hockey team, but they always kind of disappoint. I'm a Leafs fan, and I have been forever, and that's a tough thing to do.
Nice. Well, while in Put in Bay, I met some folks from Canada and in the Put in Bay area. But yeah, if you haven't been to Put in Bay, I definitely recommend it. It's really fun.
Where's that?
Put in Bay, it's an island, uh, about 45, 50 minutes to an hour away from Ontario. It's Put in Bay, it's in between Lakeside Marblehead, which is in Ohio, and in Ontario. But if you haven't been to Put in Bay, definitely recommend it. It's
I have
very
not
fun.
been, and I will take that recommendation. I love that.
But it my advice, you would definitely love Lakeside Marblehead
Okay.
the most. I mean, they're both great, but Lakeside Marblehead is 10 times the best.
Well, and we have like Algonquin Park, which is this ginormous park of camping and you can go canoeing and Algonquin is beautiful. That's about 4 hours north of Toronto, and you know sometimes with traffic it takes 7 hours, and you go, why am I doing this? What? Like those places where everyone goes, oh, you got to go to Muskoka, which is part of northern Ontario, and you go, I'd love to, but it takes 7 hours to get there. And then when you're there, you go, oh yeah, I love this, and then you go, oh God, I got to drive home again. I got to drive home again.
That's the big part.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like you try it first, like I made it, and it's like, oh, how do we get home?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're like, for 3 days, you're like, this is bliss, and then you went, oh no, 3 days of bliss.
And is there any advice you would pass on to folks that want to go into voice acting?
Oof. Listen, yeah, sure. Do it, enjoy it, love it. Um, be creative. Just do crazy voices, but also listen to the best. Listen to Mel Blanc. Listen to the people that created this genre. Who the Warner Brothers guys, the what are they called? The Nickelodeon guys, like who did all this to begin with. Listen to them and listen to what their ranges are. You know what I mean? Because they go up and down and they color it with so much beautiful sort of essence. Like, yeah, but they go like this, and then they go like this, and you go, holy shit, how does that guy do that? But it's part of your vocal cords, right? It's part of what we do. Yeah, do it, but also study the craft and study the people who do it. That's what I would do.
Nice. And we are coming down to the end of the interview, and we have two famous questions. Uh,
Oh,
the one question my mother wants to know is, do you happen to have a favorite board game or card game?
board game, card game. Uh, you know what? It's classic, and I'm gonna spoil it, but I love Monopoly.
Great game.
I do. I'm a Monopoly fan.
Nice. Is there, if I'm allowed to ask, is there a is there a Canadian monopoly? Canada's for one.
I think there is. I do believe there is. And I mean, you know, the four corners are like, you know, Bay Street and Wall Street, not Wall Street, but you know, they're all Toronto kind of like it's Toronto centric. I'm gonna be honest. If anything goes Canadian in terms of those worldwide things, they tend to go, sorry, police sirens stuff. I can hear that. Um, uh, they go Toronto centric, and that's okay. But I think there is a Toronto version of that. Yes.
Mhm. And is there a favorite vintage or retro product that you had when you were a kid or something that you enjoy?
Remember those little things? It was a telephone that you used to push on a pole that went.
Oh yes.
Yeah, remember those?
Mhm.
I love that thing.
Nice.
I love that. Also, Cheese Whiz, which I haven't had in
Very fun.
like 40 years, because I look at Cheese Whiz now and I go, oh, why would I ever have eaten that? But I did when I was a kid. Well, look at I came from a family of 7 kids, and it was like, oh, Cheese Whiz, I love it.
Or string cheese.
Yeah, string cheese.
Or the cheese spray.
No, we didn't have the cheese spray then. Like we were, I wasn't even in that world. Just Cheese Whiz. I loved it.
When you said you came from a family of seven kids, that reminds me of a similar story to my dad's side of the family with his parents, my grandparents.
Oh, listen, you know, whatever you could do to get noticed, whatever you could do to be like, it's me, I'm here. You know, you would do any of that, and that included eating Cheese Whiz for some reason.
And this one other question I've been wanting to ask, because this is a question I've been wanting to ask folks who are Canadian or Canadian artists in general, is that so it's been 25 years since South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut came out. And there's a scene in the movie, there's a very intense scene in the movie where the four boys, the four main characters, they go to watch a movie done by two Canadian comedians, Terrence and Phillip. And then there's like this goofiness that goes on between US and Canada. Now, if you've seen the movie or are familiar with South Park, how do you react to Terrence and Phillip or just the whole purpose of their Canadian jokes?
All of that, yeah, it's insane. Listen, I love South Park. I love those guys. I think they're very funny. Um, you know, sometimes when in the press, the U.S. especially, like kind of comment on Canada, so like the about and out and all those things where they go, and I'm like, we don't really talk like that. But however, that's okay, you know, because at least they're sort of, you know, referencing our culture. I mean, which is a little different, you know, but Terrence and Phillip, like with their heads and their moving, and you know, I'm like, what? Really? Why are they so weird? But you know, when I lived in England, the second year I lived in England, like I remember calling home, talking to my brothers, and they're like, "Hey Eddie, how's it going, eh? What's going on?" Well, hey. And I was like, "Oh no, we talk like that. We do talk like that."
Mhm.
So I think they kind of nailed it, but at the same time, we don't we don't always go, "Hey, what's going on about?" Like that's not a thing we do, as you can hear with my accent. Like, but again, I mean, I've lived in England and the U.S. for a couple of years and whatever, but out and about, that kind of makes me crazy. That little thing about what they do to us, I'm like, we don't talk like that. But that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's you know, it's like us saying you know you're American. You go, how's it going? Huh? Or huh? Is it huh that you guys say a lot?
Yeah, we say, ah,
Huh? Yeah, yeah. Depending on where you are. Like I mean, the Great Lakes states, right?
I'm in
Huh?
the Ohio area.
I know. No, I know. It's like, huh?
And were you ever a Monty Python fan?
Oh my God. You know what? I was, and then I kind of went away from it. But then I did Spamalot the musical, as I think
Nice.
from my resume. But I did Spamalot the musical, and I became a huge Monty Python fan during all of that. And then I got to meet Eric Idle in
Nice.
He came to our opening night in Stratford, Stratford Festival, and I just was in awe of this man. Like I basically was playing him. So I played Patsy in the musical Spamalot, if any of you know that. Which basically is him doing, always look on the bright side of life, right? And he and I had a chat for going on 25 minutes. And then he said, I do have one thought for you. And I went, oh my God, Eric Idle is giving me a note. And he did. As an actor, he gave me a note. And I went, I love that. Thank you so much. So yeah, I love Monty Python, Life of Brian, all of the stuff that they did was, Eric Idle and I just
They're hilarious.
Yeah, I think they're brilliant. And you can use a lot of their stuff and stuff that we do, as you know, today as voice actors. You go, I'm going to take from that moment. I'm going to take from that moment. And we do, right? That's what we do.
Inspiration.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Especially one of the great scenes in Monty Python and the Holy Grail is one when they bring in the Trojan rabbit. That's always the funniest part. And the other scene is when they're trying to cross the bridge, and can't remember how it goes, but John Cleese is like the first one to go, and they're all like, "Oh, that's easy." And then
That's easy.
then they get, one gets asked a question. He's like, "I don't know that."
I mean, unfortunately, that's not in the musical of Spamalot, but so many moments of those captured in the musical of Spamalot that we did at Stratford in last year. And you go, this is ridiculous. And you're having so much fun just portraying different characters. And that's what we do. Like that's.
And then they're getting ready to have a big battle, and they all get arrested at the end. It's basically Blazing Saddles, but for England almost.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. They tried to make a musical of Blazing Saddles. They did. And
Lord.
I know. Can you imagine? Something went wrong.
Wow. Okay, if that actually was a musical, I'd be the first person in line to go see it.
Like I would be there. Yeah.
I love that movie. I don't care what people say about it. It's hilarious.
Yeah. The music, like you can throw anything on the musical, and you go, I'm gonna go see it because why not?
Hey, if Cleveland Little was still alive, I mean, he would be fighting to get that into a musical, and even when people would say, so he'd just look at them and be like, "The hell's wrong with you?"
What the hell's wrong with you people?
Exactly.
I just did Kiss Me Kate, which is a Taming of the Shrew, Shakespeare. But the arc of it, and you go, well, why would someone make this into a musical? But it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Anyway.
Edward, thank you again for joining today's episode, and
it's great.
Wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, and follow us on Instagram. See you next week.